Tappy has just released Arc 9 Chapter 54, and this video will be a summary of the chapter. I'm a failure too, just like you. The words hit Aldebaran deep. The witch who embodied knowledge had such a look on her face that Al would not forget. Echidna says that Al being here is evidence of her own shortcomings. This didn't make Al happy. Echidna was someone who was great in the world, and she considered herself a failure. Echidna says that Al drew the worst fate. Al thinks upon his life. His time with Echidna was not unhappy. Yes, she killed him a million times. Yes, she called him a name he didn't like. But still, Echidna chastises him, calling him a pitiful child for finding value in living with a failure of a witch. Deep within her words, Al had detected emotions. Echidna did have emotions, and Al would try to sense them. As time passed, 10 years for him, 400 for her, they met again. Aldebaran, she called, the witch of greed who once called herself inadequate. There was no trace of those emotions in those sayings that he saw before. The scene changes. Quick editor's note. From what I'm understanding is that the witch of greed in the past considered herself inadequate, but the present witch of greed doesn't really consider herself inadequate. The ice anchor was Majestic, and opposed him was Felt and her army. Al didn't need to ask. Them being here meant that Heinkel and Roy were defeated. Not only that, the Divine Dragon had not appeared, meaning that it was being held back. Even with the authority he held, and the non-lethality pact, both Roy and even the dragon were being held back or defeated. It was unthinkable. The scene changes. 246. Al says that Petra has some nerve for taking in a witch factor. A ripple stiffened within the army. Petra's cheeks stiffened. Having an authority was a trump card, information known only to their group, but Al followed the trails and realized it was Petra who held the witch factor. Al states in his estimating whether it was Petra or Melee who read the Book of the Dead, he was sure that they wouldn't be able to move. To stall Reinhard, he needed the Witch of Envy to manifest. To do that, he made someone in Petra's group read Subaru's Book of the Dead. Just reading one of those books can wreck your mind, and you survived reading Natsuki Subaru's? Depending on the case, Subaru's book was a top-class cursed artifact. There shouldn't be many people who could look into death and remain intact. Al says that underestimating his opponent is one of his bad habits. Petra had read the Book of the Dead, survived, and then taken in a witch factor. If anything, maybe reading the Book of the Dead spurred her to take in that witch factor. No one can defeat the you that I created. The words echoed in Al's mind, and a second later, a golden fist slammed down on Al's head. Dear gods, spirits, O Lord Odlagnar, I swear I'll never attend a celebration for as long as I live. The scene changes. 61. That's the number of people that entered the battlefield after defeating Roy. The full reformation of the Aldebusters gathered for the final confrontation. They barely had any time to breathe, and Petra was glad that everyone was organized. The imaginary Subaru tells Petra they cannot let Otto or Melee use their divine protections, as they are at their limits. We see that Otto with his memory devoured, and Melee stopping the Black Serpent meant that they were not present for the final fight. Melee wanted to come because, of course, Petra could compress her recovery time, but Petra said that Subaru wouldn't be happy, so Melee stopped. Petra's inner romantic circuits twinged when Melee backed off when Subaru's name was mentioned. Plus, Melee had another mission, to look out for the Black Serpent, which vanished. Gluttony had shaved down their strength, but luckily Garfiel was now present. They say that they will win for Subaru. The scene changes. Dear gods, I swear I'll never dream with anyone again. The scene changes. Al says you cannot leave fate to someone else. Garfiel then charged in with the army, and we see that Petra compressed the army's distance to the ice anchor that Emilia had made. Garfiel lunged forward and got hit by a floating piece of stone. Al then ran forwards, coming up against Ram, Flam and Grasses. The scene changed. 37 attempts. He hit Garfiel with a stone slab. He had to conjure it at the right time. Too slow or too late would cause everything to be messed up. Al learned it by feeling. He rushed forwards. Flam and Grasses appeared from the sides, and Ram from above. Al says that Rem has been flattened, but Ram tells Al to not underestimate the bond that they share. The fact that Ram was confident meant that Rem was alive, meaning Al was unsure about Ye's fate. Al uses Earth brand arts. Using his link with Volcanica, he had a lot of mana. He generates blades, causing Flam and Grasses to jump back. Ram dived in from above, and Al picked up a stone sword, but Ram used wind magic to grab one of the swords and smashed him in the face. 91 attempts. It played out again. Ram attempted to grab a stone sword, but decided against it due to Al's movements. Al darted forwards, grabbing Ram's leg and slamming her to the ground. Al also took some wind slashes. Flam and Grasses tried to counterattack, but Al made a wave of sand, swallowing them. Someone shouted out a command, and Al was knocked backwards into his own sea of stone blades. 112 attempts. Someone shouted out commands. Al shifted and directed his wave of sand at a man who just materialized out of nowhere, swallowing him alongside the twin sisters. Al then jumps forwards, trying to escape, but he's hit by Olgoa. 146 attempts. The Olgoa was fired, but this time it hit a decoy made of clay. The decoy looked like Natsuki Subaru. Al put up his middle finger up to the caster, but it was then pierced in the back by a white light. 147. Behind him, Felt was holding the meteor staff. Al says that it's bugged as hell for him to be taken out by his teacher's own weapon. 148. Al wonders how he could overcome the white light. "Oh gods, I vow never to give a gift for the rest of my life." What exactly does the authority of melancholy do? Aldebaran says. "Oh gods, I vow never to wave to anyone ever again." It can't just be teleportation. Authorities don't work like that. "Oh gods, I vow to pray before sleeping every night." They always represent a concept, right? Melancholy. "Oh gods, I vow to never share in anyone's pain." A sinking feeling, downer, cloudy skies, depression, sunken? Ha! "Oh god, I vow to never rejoice beneath a clear sky." So you're crushing it, huh? Space, distance. No, it's not just that you're crushing. "Oh god, I vow never to lament the falling rain." You're crushing the time you normally need to think. You're filling it in, but the witch factor isn't. "Oh gods, I vow never to gaze at the rainbow with anyone ever again." This witch factor isn't that convenient, is it? At that second, Al broke through the encirclement, and Al made eye contact with Petra. Petra couldn't see him due to his helmet, but she knew that Al had seen through her authority. Petra activated her authority and disappeared. Al says, "Don't tell me you can even crush your own space too." Petra was now behind her allies. If Al wanted to reach her, he would have to do it all again. Imaginary Subaru says that it's obvious that Al is redoing events. Petra didn't want to believe it, but seeing it firsthand made her believe it. Petra says that Subaru and Al's power are different. Subaru says if things were fair, then he would be this strong as well. Petra asked how many times did it take to reach out to her. Al says 10, maybe 20 times. Deep down, Petra multiplied that number by 20. How many times had Aldebaran died? If his power worked like Subaru, he would have to die, meaning what stood before Petra wasn't a man, but a monster disguised as one. He was someone who numbed the feeling of death. That was his secret, his strength, and Petra would have to overcome that. Those who bear the name of the Witch of Melancholy are never granted convenient fates. Those were the words spoken, and Petra gave up her very future to overcome these odds. The scene changes. 7011. There's no reason for me to stop. Al wanted to tip his hat to Petra. Not that he wanted to remove his helmet, but he wanted to show respect. Al says he cannot forgive Subaru. Al learned about the Aldebusters. He liked their nickname. Al learned how Petra's authority worked. If you went in without understanding, you would die. Luckily, people like Aldebaran and Subaru could survive their first strike kill attacks by witches and sin archbishops. Petra was compressing thoughts and time together, and it made the battle very hard. It took 7,011 attempts to progress 11 seconds of battle. And even after that, Petra would simply slip away. Petra and Old Man Rom were a very bad matchup. Al knew about the melancholy witch factor. It was only compatible with the hero. However, you would have to pay a price, and then you could use it. Echidna initially didn't want to speak about the two special witch factors, but Al pressed her directly. Only the wielder can pay the price, and as a result the wielder would lose their will. Al calls out Subaru's name. Even though Al was the person that made Petra read the Book of the Dead, it all originated from Subaru's influence. Subaru influenced not only Petra, but also the Aldebusters. Fate, what an irony. It was Natsuki Subaru and Aldebaran themselves who most hated the concept of fate, and yet their every action seemed to shape it. Priscilla came into his mind, but Al thought about his sensei instead. Wait a second, how could Al think this long? They were in the middle of a fight. Al realized that his thoughts themselves had been compressed. The scene changes. God, I swear to keep this secret all my life. Compress agony. When you have too much to think about, your head explodes. Petra considered herself the third most knowledgeable on Return by Death, behind Subaru and Aldebaran. To overcome it was to accelerate Al's thoughts. Back during the royal selection, Subaru had broken down, becoming a hollow shell. But Al was human. Petra would recreate the same scenario and cause Aldebaran to crack under pressure, just like how Subaru did all the way back in the royal capital. Aldebaran redefined his matrix. Petra called out to her allies, saying that the true battle begins now. Everyone shouted back, except for one person. Old Man Rom collapsed to the floor. Time rewinds only by a brief moment. Domain expansion, matrix redefinition. When Rom heard those words, he stiffened. He knew of Petra's plan and agreed to it. But something was wrong. Rom's plan had worked. They managed to corner Aldebaran and defeat him. Domain expansion, matrix redefinition. But a second later, everything reset. Everyone was in their original positions just a few seconds ago. This was the 5th time. What is going on? Rom says. No one else noticed the anomaly, just him. Petra and her allies called for instructions, and Rom barked out orders. Domain expansion, matrix redefinition, and so the 6th final battle began. And with that, the chapter ends. So, what an amazing chapter. So this seems to be the end, the final fight. I'm hoping Petra loses because we need to get Al to the Great Vent to see what happens. But it seems that by Petra causing Al to, I guess, not mentally break down, but by accelerating his thoughts, it caused Al to swap roles. So instead of him being, I guess we call him the victim, he's now like the aggressor where everything's resetting. And Rom is going to have his mind broken because he's trapped in the time loop. So, not too bad, not too bad.